I hate The Rise of Skywalker.
Hate leads to suffering.
I know, could I start this channel on an even more positive note? Never before have I hated the Star Wars movie. Not even Attack of the Clones. But The Rise of Skywalker? I've been a Star Wars fan for as long as I can remember, and I was very excited when The Force Awakens was being released.
I'm so excited!
I loved The Last Jedi, and I was beyond excited for The Rise of Skywalker.
I'm so excited!
And was hoping it would at least be better than The Force Awakens. Instead, I saw what is the most disappointing movie of all time.
You disappoint me.
So what we're gonna do, I'll rank the films, because that's realistically the most interesting part of the video, then I'll do a review of the film.
This is where the fun begins.
They fly now? They fly now!
Never in a million years would I have thought that I'd be putting the final movie of the entire saga at the very bottom of my ranking of these films.
But today, it's like there's rock bottom, 50 feet of crap, then me.
I'll get more into it after the ranking. For now, let's just say that it's below even Attack of the Clones.
I have the high ground!
Because I outright hate it and it frustrates me, and I can't say the same for any of the other 10 films. The Rise of Skywalker gets a 3.8 out of 10.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
The fact that this isn't last just goes to show how bad The Rise of Skywalker is. But Attack of the Clones has laughably bad dialogue.
The thought of not being with you. I can't breathe.
Even worse acting from Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman, and the CGI is just awful. The movie is filled with it, and while that final battle does have its moments, it is just a blur of CGI mess. The love story between Anakin and Padme isn't executed well at all, and is one of the weakest aspects of the prequel trilogy. But this movie certainly is entertaining. Some of the action sequences are a lot of fun.
What about Padme?
She seems to be on top of things.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
And Ewan McGregor and Christopher Lee are pretty great. This film also hinted towards Anakin's fall to the dark side, and I think that was done pretty well. But this is far from being a good film. I give Attack of the Clones a 4 out of 10.
No, Mr. Stay. Mr. called Jar Jar Binks. Mr. your humble servant.
That won't be necessary.
Oh, but it is. 'Tis demanded by the gods, it is.
The Phantom Menace is definitely the most dull and boring of the franchise, but that doesn't necessarily make it a bad film. It does involve too much politics in the plot with a trade blockade, trade federation, something like that.
Continue to rely on negotiation.
Negotiation. We've lost all communications.
His vomit on his sweater already, mom's spaghetti.
And it does spend way too much time on Tatooine, which significantly lengthens the runtime. And just like Attack of the Clones, there is plenty of bad CGI, most notably Jar Jar Binks.
You were banished because you were clumsy.
You mightn't be saying that.
But he's really not as bad as people make him out to be, and he's really only significant in this film, but by now I kind of appreciate him. And this film has some great action sequences, from the pod race to the space battle in the end, and that lightsaber battle, which is one of the best in the franchise. Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor are great, and really carry this movie. I just wish we could have gotten more Qui-Gon. He was a pretty great character. I give The Phantom Menace a 5 out of 10.
People are counting on us. The galaxy is counting on us. Solo, we'll figure it out. We'll use the Force. That's not how the Force works.
If nostalgia were a movie, this is it. But really, it's A New Hope too, and that's why it's fairly low on the list. It is a near exact copy of the original film. Someone on a desert planet who is strong with the Force finds a droid that the bad government people are looking for, and they have a planet-killing weapon in the shape of a planet, and there's a convenient way to blow it all up.
How do we blow it up? There's always a way to do that.
Because of course there is. And then an X-Wing does blow it up. There goes J.J. Abrams following the 3R song.
We gotta learn to reduce, reuse, recycle.
But it's great to see old characters again, like Han, Leia, Chewie, and very briefly Luke. But other than Rey and Kylo Ren, these characters just aren't that great. Finn is utterly forgettable, Poe slightly less, but still not great. But this film's a lot of fun. The CGI looks incredible, and it has a lot of great cinematography. A lot of people hold this movie very highly, I'm just not one of them. But I still think it's a good film. I give The Force Awakens a 7.3 out of 10.
Everybody stand back!
What's that supposed to be?
This is a thermal detonator that I just armed.
That's a rock.
Han Solo is my favorite character of all time, so of course I was excited for a spin-off film about him. But this movie definitely has its problems. The story isn't all that great. Kira is a very weirdly written character, Dryden Voss is a bit of a cartoon villain, that cameo at the end feels a little forced and likely won't lead to anything, and I'll always see this as a missed opportunity, because this could have been amazing with Lord and Miller directing it and using their script, but I still really enjoy this movie. Alden Ehrenreich played the young Han perfectly, as good as anyone who isn't Harrison Ford could have. There was great action, some decent supporting characters and performances. The Kessel Run.
What is that? What the fuck is that?
Still don't know what that is. And it was a very fun movie, and one of the most rewatchable films in the franchise. I give Solo a 7.8 out of 10.
Hello there.
General Kenobi!
The best of the prequels, Revenge of the Sith is certainly one of the most, if not the most, emotional films in the franchise. The tragedy of Anakin Skywalker finally comes to a close and he becomes Darth Vader. That's what this entire trilogy has been leading up to, and it's executed brilliantly. Well, almost brilliantly. Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor deliver their best performances yet, as well as the best lightsaber duel in all of Star Wars. A lot of the CGI still looks pretty bad, but there are some beautiful looking space sequences, and accompanied by John Williams' incredible score,
Order 66.
is one of the saddest moments in all of Star Wars. Best of the prequels, but still not all that great. I give Revenge of the Sith a 7.9 out of 10. While Return of the Jedi might be the lesser film of the original three, it's still pretty great. It does go a little too much in the direction of comedy, especially with the Ewoks, and it does use some all too familiar plot points, most notably Death Star 2, and it just doesn't recapture the magic of the first two films.
It's a kind of magic.
But it was still able to wrap up this trilogy perfectly. It delivered one of the best space battles, along with another great lightsaber duel, and wrapped up Luke's journey to Jedi Knight perfectly. At the same time, it showed us Anakin's redemption when he saved Luke from the Emperor, who somehow survived because, as explained by the Rise of Skywalker,
the dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
So while it might be the worst movie in the original trilogy, the worst movie of a trilogy like this is still going to be pretty damn impressive.
Most impressive.
I give Return of the Jedi an 8.7 out of 10.
Be careful not to choke on your aspirations, Director.
Rogue One puts the war in Star Wars.
Yeah. What it is a good for? Absolutely nothing.
And starting with this film, any of these remaining films could make it into my top 10 favorite all-time films. Well, one of them certainly will. You always see these big ships, the Star Destroyers, the Death Star, but you'll never really grasp just how massive they are until you've seen Rogue One. Only Gareth Edwards can pull off scale this well. The film has great characters, even if they are all killed off.
That's it? What, we some kind of Suicide Squad?
The first two acts are a little slow, but when you get to that third act, it's easily my favorite in the franchise. It has the best space battle, that Vader sequence is the best moment of the entire franchise, and it is an all-out war. I didn't know what to expect from it going in, it being the first Star Wars anthology film, but I was very happy with what I got. I hope we get more anthology films soon. I give Rogue One a 9.2 out of 10.
I feel something.
You feel it?
Yes, I feel it.
That's the Force.
Really?
Wow, it must be really strong
Oh,
with
I've
you.
never felt any... Ow! No!
What now might be the second most divisive film in the franchise, The Last Jedi is the third best Star Wars film.
Oh fuck, I can't believe you've done this.
I'm very glad that Rian Johnson took the risks he did, because most, if not all of them, paid off. Easily the best cinematography of any film in the franchise, this movie, while it may not have the most of action sequences, it's really more about the characters, especially Kylo, Rey, and most of all, Luke. It was the perfect conclusion to his arc, and it was great direction to take his character in. Rather than repeating what I've written in my review of it, let's just say that it had epic moments, beautiful cinematography, and great characters. I give The Last Jedi a 9.3 out of 10.
Now, give us a few minutes to lock it down. Largely very dangerous.
Who is this? What's your operating number?
Boring conversation anyway.
Star Wars, the one that started it all, and remains as one of the best. Arguably the godfather of sci-fi, but I'm sure an argument for 2001 can be made. It's a bit of a staple for adventure movies, and the effects still hold up today. It's a great movie to watch if you want to appreciate how people made films like this back in the day without CGI.
Take over.
Even though the CGI ships nowadays do look better. George Lucas introduced to us this universe perfectly and started what would become the Skywalker saga. Some of the most iconic characters of all time in what is one of the most iconic films of all time. Star Wars, or Episode 4 A New Hope, is the second best Star Wars film. I give Star Wars a 9.7 out of 10.
What? Why, you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder!
Who's scruffy looking?
It was always going to be Empire. It's the best Star Wars film, and it also happens to be my all-time favorite film. It took everything the first film did and just did it better.
This is brilliant. But this is brilliant.
It covers themes of good and evil, has incredible action sequences, emotional battles.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
That all lead to the king of all plot twists, and arguably the most iconic moment in cinematic history.
No. I am your father.
Again, I've done an extended review on Empire, but to try and sum it up as best as possible, Empire is one of the greatest films of all time, the best sequel, potentially the best sci-fi film too, but it's just missing that little something to get it to that 10 rating. I give The Empire Strikes Back a 9.9 out of 10, and the title of Best Star Wars Movie.
Oh, it actually says the best.
You can find more on each film on either my Instagram or my Letterboxd, both of which are linked in the description. But now, let's talk about why The Rise of Skywalker is at the very bottom of the list and is the most disappointing movie of all time, at least for me.
You disappoint me.
Rather than repeating what I talked about in my rant, I'll try to summarize.
Shout the season, man.
So no spoilers to begin with, then I'll have a clear warning regarding spoilers. So here's what I liked. There were some great moments in this, with Rey and Kylo Ren, most notably their character arcs. And this is easily the best bit of acting that both Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver have done in the entire trilogy. And these might be the two best performances of the entire franchise. I'll leave their arcs for the spoilers though. C-3PO was hilarious throughout, and all of the CGI looks very good. Seeing Lando back was great too, and they handled Leia as best as they possibly could, under the circumstances. And the actual conclusion of it, they did that pretty well too. And the visuals are great too, as they always are with Star Wars films. But that's really all I can say about the good.
That's all, folks.
To describe this movie in one word, frustrating. So many little things that they had in this film that feel rushed and make this movie feel very overstuffed. They brought in the Knights of Ren, essentially a space biker gang, but all they do is show up. That is it. One other tiny thing, but that's it. They try to introduce new characters, but if you were to take them out of the movie, nothing changes.
Nothing!
They introduce these things that feel cheap and like an easy way out. I won't spoil it, but that little pyramid thing, really? Introduce something like that in the last movie? It just makes me mad. The Emperor is back.
Guess who's back? Back again.
But there's no real explanation for it, and he's an exposition dumping machine for the entire time he's on screen. His appearance doesn't feel rewarding at all, because there was zero build up to it, and it just doesn't work. And they don't even bother trying to explain how he survived, or how they managed to build this big ass fleet of Star Destroyers with Death Star cannons on each of them. They just try to stuff so much in this film, both fan service and locations. It feels like it could be at least 2 films. But this is why you don't get one guy to make the first and third movie, especially when he
Reduce, reuse, recycle.
so much from the original trilogy, and where the middle movie actually takes risks. I have nothing but respect for Rian Johnson, especially after Knives Out. J.J. Abrams just played it way too safe, tried to please the fandom, and it ended up a train wreck. And that space battle, I was hoping that would be the film's big crescendo. Nothing!
Nothing!
You have an opportunity to show off all these ships with their various designs. All we see is the ships we've seen dozens of times before, and most of the time we spend with Finn, who is yet again on a side quest. At this point, you could rename him Side Quest, and it would be the most appropriate character name of all time. Now it's time to talk about spoilers, so here's your warning. Skip to here in the video if you want to avoid spoilers.
Now! Now! Now!
So, Rey's a Palpatine.
I am the Senate.
Even though she does a name swap at the end with her new yellow lightsaber, which I was expecting her to have ever since The Force Awakens, I'm okay with it. It explains why she's so strong with the Force, and I'll admit that when she force lightning that ship, that was pretty cool and unexpected. But then they say that Chewie was on that ship, but then he wasn't, and they do this so often. They take away C-3PO's memory, but R2 just reboots him minutes later. It's unsatisfying and feels very forced for no good reason. Then there's this big deal about Finn having something to say to Rey, but then he never says it. Did they just forget about it? Again, just frustrating.
While Danny kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet and
Dark Rey. 10 seconds is what we get. A mere 10 seconds. This movie has plenty of visions that make it more boring to watch, if anything. And the glorious Star Wars music was also underused. There were so many perfect moments to throw in Duel of the Fates, and they just didn't. That might have been the one thing I really wanted from this movie, for them to put in that one piece of music at some point. But back to Rey and Ben's characters. They were the best part of this film. Both arcs were wrapped up very well. Ben turned to the light, just like pretty much everyone thought he would. The Harrison Ford cameo was great, as was Mark Hamill's, and the whole of Rey versus Palpatine, despite the exposition, was good. And there was even an endgame parallel, while Palpatine says, "I am all the Sith," then Rey says, "I am all the Jedi." I thought that was great. I also loved hearing the voices of the Jedi. Yoda, Obi-Wan, Anakin, Qui-Gon, and more. A great moment. Maybe upon rewatches, I might hate this less, but for now, I stand by my word. This is the worst Star Wars movie to date. It is a complete overstuffed mess of things that they try to introduce at the last minute, and it all comes crashing down like a superstar destroyer into the Death Star. Casual moviegoers will probably find enjoyment in it, but I certainly couldn't. This film just makes me mad. The conclusion to this saga, this worldwide phenomenon, and is just awful. I'll rewatch the original saga and the 2 anthology films in a heartbeat, but the prequels and the sequels, minus The Last Jedi, I'll give it at least until the next Star Wars film, which is rumored to be coming in 2022. I think I've talked enough about this movie.
Oh, really?
And I just hope you guys enjoyed my debut video. A 2019 ranking video will be coming at the end of January, trying to get to 100 2019 movies right now, so stay tuned for that. Like, share and subscribe, all that good stuff, and thanks for watching.